After Eli found their abandoned truck deep in the desert, which led him to find and rescue his sister, he believed life might finally start getting better. He thought he could help his sister Seline heal from the lies she had lived with for 11 years. But soon he would discover that the rescue was just the beginning of their nightmare, drawing them back into the desert's dangers once again. Before we dive into part 2 of this shocking story, let us know where you're watching from today. And if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe. 1 week had passed since the chaos at the desert bar, since Eli had finally found Seline after 11 years of searching. The protection house, a modest residence in a secure neighborhood, had become their temporary home while the investigation continued. Eli stared at the ceiling fan, rotating lazily overhead, listening to the muted voices drifting from the kitchen where Trent and his sister Anya were unpacking the dinner they'd brought. "You okay?" Trent asked, appearing in the doorway with a plate in hand. Eli sat up on the couch. "Just thinking." "Dangerous habit," Trent joked, handing him the plate. "I brought tamales from Rosita's." Anya emerged from the kitchen carrying drinks. "Figured you could use some normal human interaction after a week of police interrogations." "Where's Seline?" Anya asked, setting the drinks on the coffee table. "Still with the police and her representative," Eli replied, checking his watch. "She's been gone since this morning, but she should be home soon." "Her representative?" Trent asked, settling into an armchair. "That's what they call her advocate," Eli explained. "Samantha Regis. She's a child welfare attorney specializing in trauma cases." "How's she doing?" Anya asked quietly. Eli sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's complicated. Some days she seems like she's adjusting well. Other days she barely speaks." "That's understandable," Trent said. "She spent 11 years with those people. That's not something you just shake off." "What's the latest with the investigation?" Anya asked, leaning forward. "The inactive military training ground was being used by the gang to hide illegal weapons underground in the old barracks," Eli explained. "With the place abandoned and so deep in the desert, it was perfect for a hideout. The police found quite an arsenal down there." "All because of that drone footage you discovered," Trent added. "And Seline's cooperation," Eli said. "She knew enough about their operation to point investigators in the right direction." They moved to the dining table, where Trent recounted how his Jeep had become a minor celebrity in town after being featured in news reports about the discovery of the truck. Mid-laugh, they heard the front door open. Seline entered, her blonde hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, wearing jeans and a light blue t-shirt. "Hey," she said softly, her eyes darting between the three of them. "Seline," Eli said, rising from his chair. "You remember Trent from the police station, and this is his sister, Anya?" Seline nodded at Trent, then offered a small smile to Anya. "Nice to meet you." "You guys go ahead with dinner," Seline said, gesturing toward the table. "I grabbed something to eat on the way. I'll join you after I clean up." Before Eli could respond, she disappeared down the hallway, the bedroom door closing behind her with a soft click. Eli frowned, turning to Trent. "Did she seem off to you?" "She's probably just tired," Trent reassured him. "This can't be easy for her." "You're right," Eli sighed. "We've barely had any downtime. Every day the police call with updates. I can't wait for things to get back to normal." They began eating, and halfway through the meal, Seline emerged and slid into the empty chair beside Eli. "Sorry about that." "Everything okay?" Eli asked, studying her face. Seline hesitated, then sighed. "Carlos was released from the hospital today. They've moved him to a holding cell." Eli tensed. "Did the police make you see him? Because you can always refuse." No, she said quickly. "They didn't force me. I wanted to see how he was doing. Miss Regis was with me the whole time. I didn't even talk to Carlos, just saw him." Seline reached for the bottle of sparkling cider and poured herself a glass, her movements practiced and fluid. She then filled glasses for the others, an automatic gesture. "Wow," Anya said. "You're very good at that." A small, sad smile crossed Celine's face. "I've been doing this as early as I could remember. I used to work as a bartender in the pub." Anya nodded, then brightened. "Oh, I almost forgot." She reached into her bag and pulled out what looked like a decorative hair clip. "I made it myself. If you press this safety button and pull from the side, a knife blade comes out." Seline stared at the device, her face suddenly pale. I'm sorry. I can't accept this." "It's just for safety," Eli said quickly. "Remember how that flip knife you had saved you from Carlos in the bar?" "That's exactly why I can't keep it," Seline whispered. "I'm still shaken every time I remember that moment. It haunts my dreams. I never stabbed anyone before, and the first person I stabbed was the man who gave me the weapon and took care of me since I was a child." Eli's jaw tightened. "Mom took care of you since you were a baby. That man, Carlos, deserves no sympathy." "You're right," Seline agreed quietly. "But still, I can't keep this weapon with me. Not now, but I'll still take it. The hair clip looks pretty." "Thank you." "It's okay," Anya said gently, placing the clip on the table. "You can put it away until you're ready." Eli cleared his throat. "We're visiting the cemetery tomorrow for Mom's funeral." "The police couldn't find her body," Eli explained to Trent and Anya. "None of the men they arrested will talk, but we're still placing a memorial stone next to Grandpa and Grandma. There won't be a service. The police advised us to keep a low profile. Just a simple stone placement." "We'd like to come if that's okay," Trent offered, looking at his sister, who nodded. "We'd appreciate that," Eli said. "We'll meet at the cemetery around 10. As they finished dinner, Eli and Seline walked their guests to the door. While Seline chatted with Anya on the porch, Trent pulled Eli aside. "So," Trent whispered, a mischievous glint in his eye. "What do you think of my sister?" Eli blinked in surprise. "Anya? She seems cool. I didn't realize you were this serious about setting us up." As they talked, Eli noticed Seline had gone quiet, her attention fixed on something across the street. Following her gaze, he scanned the darkened neighborhood, but saw nothing unusual. "Everything okay?" he called to her. Seline turned, her expression neutral once more. "Yeah, just saw a movement. Probably a squirrel." Trent and Anya said their goodbyes, climbing into Trent's Jeep and driving away. As their taillights disappeared around the corner, Eli and Seline returned to the house, locking the doors and windows according to the security protocol the police had established. "Are you sure you didn't see something out there?" Eli asked as they finished cleaning up the kitchen. "I'm sure," Seline said, though her eyes didn't quite meet his. "Just shadows playing tricks in the dark." They said goodnight at the hallway that separated their bedrooms. Inside his room, Eli pulled out his phone and opened the CCTV app the police had installed, scrolling back through the footage of the front yard. The limited camera's angle and the low light made it difficult to see clearly, but nothing seemed out of place. Still uneasy, he moved to his window and peered through the blinds. In the distance, he thought he saw someone putting on a helmet beside a motorcycle, then driving away. It could be anyone, he reasoned. A neighbor's guest, perhaps. This was a protected neighborhood, after all, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The morning light filtered through the thin curtains of Eli's bedroom as he emerged from a restless sleep. He found the house empty, but moments later the front door opened and Seline stepped inside, fully dressed and holding a rolled-up newspaper. "Morning," she said. "I just went outside to grab the paper." "You're up early," Eli observed, "and already dressed." Seline nodded, setting the newspaper on the counter. "We should be the first ones there. You should get ready. We need to go soon." Eli studied his sister's face, her features so like their mother's, yet somehow sharper, less open. "You're just like Mom, you know that? Always punctual." Something flickered across Celine's expression before she turned away. "I'll wait in the living room." When Eli was ready, they drove to the Alpine Cemetery in silence, the only sound the hum of the tires on the road. Seline kept glancing at the side mirrors, her eyes sharp with unease. As they pulled into the gravel lot, Eli noticed Detective Russ Sawyer standing next to a police SUV, engaged in a serious conversation with Samantha Regis, the child welfare attorney assigned to Celine's case. "We appreciate you being here," Eli told Sawyer. "How are you holding up, Seline?" Samantha asked, her kind eyes studying the teenager. "Still adjusting," Seline replied, her hands fidgeting with the sleeve of her black dress. "When can we return home?" "To Eli's house, I mean." "We'd like to keep you in the protection house for another week," Sawyer explained. "We received a tip that one of the buyers is somewhere in Alpine or the surrounding area, expecting a delivery from Carlos's men." "Did you know if Carlos had other hideouts?" he asked Seline. She shook her head firmly. "Number, I told Detective Sawyer yesterday about this. I only knew about the bar and the military facility." "We don't blame you," Sawyer assured her. "We just need you to stay hidden in the protection house a little while longer." Before Seline could respond, a black Jeep pulled into the parking lot. Trent and Anya arrived, both dressed in somber colors. They exchanged quiet greetings as they made their way to the designated plot, where a small van bearing the logo of Alpine Memorial Services waited. Two staff members in formal attire exited, along with the funeral director who had helped arrange the service. The staff carefully removed a marble headstone and framed photograph from the van. But as they prepared to place it on the ground, Eli's expression changed from solemn to confused. "Wait," he said, stepping forward. That's not our mother." Everyone looked at the photograph, a woman with dark hair and features nothing like Jessica Mercer's. The headstone, too, bore a different name and dates. "I'm so sorry," the director apologized, visibly flustered. "We must have grabbed the wrong one." Eli's jaw tightened, frustration plain on his face. How could this happen? He shook his head. "Seline, I'll go with them," he said, already turning toward the van. "Make sure they get it right this time." "No," Seline interjected, placing a hand on his arm. "I'll go. You should stay here. I need to find a restroom anyway. It's in the building." Before Eli could protest further, Seline followed the funeral staff back toward the van. He watched as they spoke briefly, then headed toward the cemetery's main building. "Strange mix-up," Trent commented, watching them go. "Very," Eli agreed, an uneasy feeling growing in his stomach. Detective Sawyer stepped away, his phone pressed to his ear. Eli could hear him speaking tersely to someone on the other end, confirming that the correct details had been provided to the funeral home. As minutes stretched into a quarter hour, Eli grew increasingly agitated. "She should be back by now," he muttered, pulling out his phone to call Seline. The call went straight to voicemail. "I'm going to check on her," he announced, already starting toward the building. "Eli!" Anya called suddenly, pointing across the cemetery. "Look." Following her gesture, Eli froze. There, on the far side of the grounds, was Seline, climbing into a dark sedan with two men in funeral home attire. Even from a distance, Eli could see there was no tension in her movements, no sign of coercion. She entered the vehicle willingly, closing the door behind her. "What the hell?" Eli breathed, his mind racing to make sense of what he was seeing. "Something's wrong," Sawyer said, instantly alert. "Those aren't the funeral staff we saw earlier." The detective was already calling for backup, his voice sharp with urgency as he reported the situation. The funeral director, confused and alarmed, insisted he didn't recognize the men with Seline. "Go home," Sawyer ordered Eli, his hand moving instinctively to his service weapon. "Let the police handle this." But Eli was already sprinting across the cemetery, ignoring the shouts behind him. He reached his car, hands shaking as he fumbled with the keys. The engine roared to life, and he accelerated toward the cemetery exit, desperate to catch a glimpse of the sedan. For a heart-stopping moment, he thought he'd lost them. Then, at the intersection ahead, he spotted the dark vehicle turning right. Eli pressed the accelerator, weaving through traffic, ignoring the red light that would delay him. Swerving around a delivery truck, he caught another glimpse of the sedan in the distance. His heart pounded as he pushed the car faster, the speedometer climbing. 60, 70, 80. Then, without warning, the car lurched. The acceleration died, and the brake light illuminated on the dashboard. Cursing, Eli guided the failing vehicle to the roadside, watching helplessly as the sedan disappeared around a bend. In the rearview mirror, he saw police lights approaching, followed by Trent's familiar Jeep. Rage and frustration boiled over, and Eli slammed his fists against the steering wheel, a howl of anguish escaping his throat as he realized his sister, found after 11 long years, was gone again. Eli flung open the car door and stalked toward Trent's Jeep, his face a mask of fury and desperation. Trent and Anya hurried to meet him, followed by Detective Sawyer and another officer. "Someone sabotaged my car," Eli said through gritted teeth, pointing to the dark fluid leaking from beneath the vehicle. They cut the brake line. Sawyer crouched to examine the damage, then straightened with a grim expression. He's right. This was deliberately sabotaged. "Those funeral staff," the detective continued, his voice hardening. "They must be Carlos's men in disguise, trying to kidnap Seline." "But," Anya began hesitantly, "they didn't kidnap her, not exactly." "What do you mean?" Sawyer asked sharply. "I saw her get into that car," Anya explained. "She wasn't being forced. She climbed in willingly." "Are you sure?" Trent asked his sister, his brow furrowed. "Positive," Anya confirmed. "There was no struggle, no signs of coercion. She just got in." "That doesn't make sense," Eli insisted, running his hands through his hair in frustration. "Why would Seline go with them? And why would they risk making an appearance when they knew police would be around?" Behind them, the second officer was already arranging for a tow truck to transport Eli's disabled car. Sawyer pulled Eli aside, his expression serious. "What Anya observed is important," the detective said quietly. "If Seline went willingly, we need to consider why. Has she shown any strange or suspicious behavior lately?" Eli hesitated, thinking back over the past week. "Not particularly. She's been withdrawn and quiet, but I attributed that to exhaustion from the investigation and adjusting to everything." "The knife," Anya interjected, joining them. "The flipped knife hair clip I gave her last night. She refused to take it, and she seemed strangely provoked by it." "We can't be sure what that means," Trent countered, coming to stand beside his sister. She explained why. It reminded her of stabbing Carlos. Sawyer considered this, then nodded decisively. "Let's continue this conversation somewhere more secure. I want to check Seline's room at the protection house. She might have left a message or some indication of what's happening." 20 minutes later, they arrived at the protection house, which now buzzed with police activity. Officers moved methodically through the rooms, searching for clues or evidence that might explain Seline's departure. Eli watched from the dining room as Sawyer and his team combed through Seline's bedroom. The room felt like a strange museum exhibit, a space inhabited but not lived in. Few personal touches adorned the dresser or walls. Seline had accumulated little during her week of freedom, as if she'd been hesitant to claim the space as her own. The house suddenly felt claustrophobic, officers moving in every direction, radios crackling with updates. Eli's head throbbed with a building pressure, the room seeming to spin around him. He needed air, space to think. "I'll be in the bathroom," he mumbled to Trent, who nodded with concern. In the small bathroom, Eli locked the door and leaned against the sink, staring at his haggard reflection. Dark circles underlined his eyes, and his skin had a grayish pallor. The events of the past week, The culmination of 11 years of searching caught up with him in a rush of emotion. Why, he whispered to his reflection, why would she leave? The question hung in the air, unanswered. With a sudden surge of frustration, Eli swept his arm across the sink, sending bottles and toiletries clattering to the floor. The plastic containers bounced, and a brown bottle of iodine tipped over the toilet lid, then its contents seeping across the floor. "Eli," Trent's voice came through the door. "You all right in there?" Eli opened his mouth to respond, but his words died in his throat as he noticed something strange. The spilled iodine had seeped under a folded piece of paper that had been sitting on the toilet lid. As the brown liquid spread, it revealed purple marks on the paper, marks that formed letters. Heart pounding, Eli carefully picked up the paper. Most of it remained white, but where the iodine had touched, words became visible. A hidden message, written in what must be lemon juice or some other acidic solution that would react with iodine. Grabbing the bottle, Eli used his finger to carefully spread more of the liquid across the paper. Words emerged, revealing a message in Seline's handwriting. "Please don't hurt the girls. I'll do whatever you ask. The court date is set for next month. I'll testify on Carlos' behalf. Tell them how you protected me all these years. Don't worry about the police. They trust me now." Eli stared at the words, his mind racing to make sense of them. The letter was addressed to Carlos, but he was in custody. Had Seline written this to someone else? Was she planning to help Carlos at his trial? "Eli," Trent called again, more urgently this time. "What's going on in there?" Eli unlocked the door, holding the stained paper in his trembling hand. "I found something." Within minutes, the bathroom was crowded with officers, Sawyer examining the letter with a grim expression. "This changes things," the detective said, carefully placing the paper in an evidence bag. "We need to search the entire house for more hidden communications." As officers spread out, renewing their search with increased urgency, Eli's gaze fell on the kitchen trash can. Sticking out from beneath some discarded packaging was the corner of a newspaper, the one Seline had brought in that morning. Pulling it from the trash, Eli carried it to the dining table where Trent and Anya waited. He began flipping through the pages frantically, searching for anything unusual. "What are you looking for?" Anya asked, leaning closer. "I don't know," Eli admitted, "but Seline brought this paper in this morning. She seemed insistent about it." Halfway through, a folded white sheet fell from between the pages. Unlike the bathroom note, this paper was already fully stained with purple marks, indicating that Seline had read it, applying some solution to reveal its hidden message. "Detective," Eli called, his voice cracking, "we found another one." Sawyer hurried over, taking the paper carefully. Written on it were geographic coordinates, nothing more. "This is our lead," Sawyer said decisively, already entering the numbers into his phone's mapping application. From the bedroom, an officer appeared holding several crumpled papers. "Sir, we found these in the wastebasket. They appear to be draft letters discarded by Seline." Sawyer examined them quickly, his expression darkening. These are drafts of responses to someone, presumably Carlos's associates. There are also more papers with purple stains. He turned to Eli, his voice grave. "Some of these detail Carlos's failure and the consequences for Seline, her brother, and the girls if she doesn't cooperate." "What girls?" "Maybe there's more of them, like Seline. Other girls," Anya said, and Trent nodded. "And my letter shows she was planning to help him," Eli said quietly, the realization settling heavily in his chest. "I have to warn you, Eli," Sawyer said carefully. "If your sister is found to be willingly aiding Carlos or his organization, she could face criminal charges herself." Eli shook his head, refusing to accept the implication. "This has to be a misunderstanding. She wouldn't side with them, not after everything." "The coordinates?" Anya interjected, pointing to the purple-stained paper. "This message was stained when Seline received it, right? So she probably know where they're taking her." Sawyer nodded slowly. "That's possible. and it's our best lead right now." He turned to the officers in the room. "I want a team ready to move in 5 minutes. We're following these coordinates." As the police mobilized around them, Eli stood motionless, the letter with Seline's pledge of loyalty to Carlos still vivid in his mind. How could his sister, his lost sister finally found, still hold allegiance to the man who had kidnapped her and killed their mother? The question haunted him as they prepared to pursue the only lead they had, the weight of betrayal settling cold and heavy in his chest. Outside the protection house, officers moved with practiced efficiency, checking weapons and coordinating through radios. Detective Sawyer studied his phone, conferring with another officer about the coordinates they'd discovered. "I'm coming with you," Eli announced, striding toward Trent's jeep. "Absolutely not," Sawyer replied without looking up. "This is a potentially dangerous situation, and you're a civilian." "She's my sister," Eli insisted, his voice rising. "I spent 11 years searching for her. I'm not going to sit here while she might be in danger." "And what happened the last time you went after her?" Sawyer asked pointedly. "Your car was sabotaged, putting you and others at risk." Eli opened his mouth to protest, but Trent stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. "He's right, Eli. Let the professionals handle this." A tense silence fell as Eli struggled with the decision. Finally, he nodded reluctantly. "Fine, but I'm coming with you, Detective. Not in Trent's car, in yours." Sawyer considered this for a moment, then sighed. "All right, but you stay in the car when we arrive, and you follow my orders without question. Understood?" "Understood," Eli agreed, relieved to have won this small concession. Trent and Anya approached to say goodbye. "Call us the second you know anything," Trent said, gripping Eli's shoulder. "We'll be waiting." "And be careful," Anya added softly. "Don't do anything reckless." As Eli climbed into Sawyer's unmarked police vehicle, he felt a strange sense of déjà vu. It hadn't been long since he'd made another desperate journey into the desert, searching for answers about his missing family. Now history seemed to be repeating itself in the cruelest way. The journey was long, the coordinates leading them deep into the Presidio County desert. Sawyer kept up a steady stream of communication with headquarters, occasionally pointing out landmarks to Eli as they passed. "What exactly are we driving toward?" Eli asked, watching the familiar desert landscape scroll by. "Based on satellite imaging, it appears to be a house," Sawyer replied, his eyes fixed on the road. "Isolated, but not completely off-grid. It's close enough to civilization to appear on maps, but remote enough to avoid casual observation." As they drove, Sawyer explained their plan. "We've got additional units meeting us at a rendezvous point 5 miles from the target. We'll approach without sirens to avoid alerting anyone inside." Eli nodded, his mind racing with scenarios and possibilities. What if it's empty? What if they've already moved her? "One step at a time," Sawyer counseled. "Let's confirm what we're dealing with first." When they finally approached the location, Sawyer pulled over to join 2 other police vehicles, waiting with their lights off. The officers gathered for a brief strategic discussion, occasionally glancing toward Eli, who remained in the passenger seat as instructed. After a few minutes, Sawyer returned. "We're proceeding to the house. It's about half a mile ahead. You are to remain in this vehicle with the doors locked. If anything happens, use this satellite phone to call for backup." He handed Eli a bulky device. "Understood?" "Yes," Eli agreed, accepting the phone. Sawyer fixed him with a stern look. "I mean it, Eli. No heroics. If your sister is in there, our best chance of getting her out safely is following protocol." As the officers disappeared over a ridge, moving cautiously toward the unseen house, Eli waited, watching the minutes tick by on the dashboard clock. Every second felt like an eternity, his mind conjuring increasingly dire scenarios. Finally, the radio crackled. "House is secure. No occupants found." Eli's heart sank. They were too late. 20 minutes later, Sawyer returned, his expression unreadable. "The house is empty," he confirmed. "But we need to take a closer look. Come with me, but stay close." Together, they approached the structure, a weathered single-story building with peeling paint and boarded windows. Inside, officers moved methodically through sparsely furnished rooms, looking for any evidence or clues. Why would they send Seline coordinates for an empty house? Eli wondered aloud, scanning the dusty interior. "That's what we need to figure out," Sawyer replied. "Check every corner, every drawer. There might be something we're missing." As Eli moved through the living room, something caught his eye, a small glint of light from the floorboards. Crouching down, he discovered a familiar item half hidden in the dust. "Detective," he called, his voice tight with excitement. "Look at this." Sawyer joined him, examining the black hair clip, the same one Anya had given Seline the night before. "This means she was here," Eli said, hope rising in his chest. "Recently." Sawyer nodded, carefully bagging the evidence. As he straightened, his gaze fell on the floor where the clip had been found. He moved his foot experimentally, tapping against the wooden planks. "Listen to that," he said, stomping lightly. "That's hollow." Calling over 2 officers, Sawyer directed them to examine the flooring. Within minutes, they had located loose boards that, when removed, revealed a hidden trapdoor. "Stand back," Sawyer ordered, drawing his weapon as another officer pulled the trapdoor open, revealing a set of stairs descending into darkness. The lead officer approached, his expression serious. "Detective, this could be connected to a larger tunnel system. These old military tunnels from World War II run beneath parts of the Texas desert with multiple exits. Smugglers use them to evade border patrol and transport contraband." "Or people," Eli added quietly, thinking of his sister. Sawyer's jaw tightened as he assessed the situation. "We need a tactical team. This is beyond our current capabilities." "But Seline," Eli began, "is either gone already or deep in a tunnel system we're not equipped to safely navigate," Sawyer interrupted. "I understand your urgency, Eli, but rushing in without proper backup would be foolish." The lead officer nodded in agreement. "He's right. Those tunnels could be dangerous, possibly booby-trapped, and certainly well-defended if they're actively being used by smugglers." Frustration burned like acid in Eli's stomach, but he recognized the logic in their caution. Still, as they exited the house to wait for the tactical team, he couldn't help feeling that every minute that passed put Seline further beyond his reach. Again. The desert sun beat down mercilessly as a temporary command center materialized around the isolated house. Officers erected shade tents, unloaded communications equipment, and established a perimeter, the disciplined efficiency of their movements a stark contrast to Eli's restless pacing. "How much longer?" he asked for the 3rd time, watching as Sawyer coordinated with newly arrived officers. "Tactical team is still about 40 minutes out," Sawyer replied, not looking up from his radio. "I know it's frustrating, but we need to follow protocol." Unable to remain still, Eli decided to explore the area around the command post, staying within the established safe perimeter. The hair clip Anya had given Seline felt heavy in his pocket, a tangible reminder of how close, yet how far, they were from finding her. Taking it out, he turned it over in his hands, remembering Celine's reaction when Anya had first offered it to her. The knife blade extended smoothly when he pressed the safety button, catching the harsh sunlight. Something about the reflection caught his attention. On a whim, Eli tilted the blade, watching how it redirected the sun's rays. A glint in the distance answered his movement, a brief, unmistakable flash of light. "Detective," Eli called, hurrying back to the command tent. "I saw something out there." Sawyer looked up, skeptical. "What kind of something?" "A reflection," Eli explained, demonstrating with the knife. "When the sun hit this at a certain angle, I caught a reflection from somewhere west of here." "Could be anything," one of the officers commented. "Piece of broken glass, discarded can." "No," Eli insisted. It responded to my movement. When I shifted the blade, the reflection changed. Sawyer hesitated, clearly torn between protocol and curiosity. The tactical team will be here soon. We should wait. Just let me show you, Eli persisted. It's not far. We can see it from here. After a moment's consideration, Sawyer nodded. All right. Dixon, Martinez, you're with us. The rest of you maintain position and wait for tactical. The four of them loaded into a patrol car, Eli directing them west from the house. As they drove slowly across the rough terrain, Eli explained how he'd noticed the reflection. There, he said suddenly, pointing ahead. About 300 yards between those rock formations. Sawyer stopped the car, pulling out his binoculars. I see it, he confirmed after a moment. It's a mirror, a large one, like a bus side mirror, mounted on some kind of pole. What's a mirror doing out here in the middle of nowhere? Officer Dixon asked, squinting toward the distant object. It's been put there deliberately, Sawyer said, lowering the binoculars. And from the condition, it's not recent. It's weathered, been there for some time. GPS shows nothing on the map here, Officer Martinez noted, checking his device. No structures, no marked roads. It could be a signal system, Sawyer suggested. Something to communicate with the house without technology that could be traced. Eli studied the surrounding landscape. Look at the ground. There's a trail leading up from the mirror to that rise. Indeed, a faint but discernible path wound from the mirror's position up a gentle slope that disappeared behind a cluster of boulders. Someone's been using this route, Officer Dixon observed, recently and frequently, based on how clear the track is. Sawyer's expression grew serious as he radioed back to the command post, informing them of the discovery. After a brief conversation, he turned to the others. Protocol says we should wait for tactical before proceeding, he began, staring up at the path with a conflicted expression. But the team is still 30 minutes out, and this trail looks recently used. If Seline is up there... We need to check it out, Eli finished, already moving toward the start of the path. Slowly, Sawyer cautioned, drawing his weapon. All right, we'll just check out where it leads. It might be a dead end. Eli, stay behind us. Martinez, you're on point. Dixon, watch our 6. The climb wasn't especially steep, but the path twisted unpredictably around rocky outcrops and dense brush. The officers advanced with practiced precision, weapons at the ready, exchanging silent hand signals. What was meant to be a quick inspection had become an unexpectedly intriguing trail. As they neared what appeared to be the top of the rise, Eli heard a sound that froze his blood, footsteps on loose gravel just ahead and around a bend in the path. Officer Martinez lifted his hand, signaling for silence. The group froze, ears straining. The footsteps persisted, unaware of their presence, joined by the soft, off-key humming of a man to himself. Then Eli shifted abruptly, and the crunch of gravel underfoot gave them away, drawing the man's attention. Martinez gestured for Sawyer to advance with him, while Dixon stayed with Eli. The two officers crept forward, disappearing around the bend. Seconds later, Eli heard a brief scuffle and a muffled cry, then silence. Dixon moved forward cautiously, Eli close behind. Rounding the bend, they found Martinez and Sawyer subduing a man in what appeared to be a funeral home uniform, one of the men who had taken Seline from the cemetery. The man struggled briefly before Sawyer secured handcuffs around his wrists and gagged him with a bandana. They dragged him off the path, securing him to a sturdy mesquite tree with a second set of restraints. He was alone, Sawyer whispered, but there must be others ahead. Martinez nodded his agreement. I heard voices further up. Sawyer radioed for backup, then signaled for them to continue. The path leveled out at the top of the rise, where a set of rough-hewn stone steps led to a small, open-air structure, something like a rudimentary observation post or shelter. From their concealed position behind a large boulder, Eli could make out voices, 2 or 3 people, engaged in quiet conversation. Sawyer signaled for them to remain still and silent, listening intently. The crackle of Sawyer's radio shattered the silence, a dispatcher's voice announcing, "Units have arrived at base. Tactical team ETA 8 minutes." Eli saw alarm register on Sawyer's face as the voices in the shelter fell silent, clearly having heard the radio. In the sudden stillness, Eli felt every heartbeat like a hammer in his chest, waiting for the inevitable confrontation. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity, broken only by the faint sound of movement from within the shelter. Sawyer signaled Martinez and Dixon to spread out, creating a perimeter around the structure. "Seline?" Sawyer called suddenly, his voice echoing against the rocks. "Seline Mercer? This is Detective Sawyer. We're here to help you." More movement, then a familiar voice responded, "Detective?" Eli's heart leaped at the sound of his sister's voice. "Seline!" he called, unable to contain himself despite Sawyer's warning glare. "Eli?" Seline's voice held a note of surprise. "What are you doing here?" "Everyone inside, come out with your hands where we can see them," Sawyer commanded, his weapon trained on the shelter's entrance. There was a moment of hesitation, then 3 figures emerged slowly into the sunlight. Seline and 2 other young women, all holding what appeared to be canvas bags. Eli stared in confusion, taking in the scene. His sister, apparently unharmed, in the company of 2 strangers, none of them showing signs of duress. "Drop the bags and step away from them," Martinez ordered, advancing cautiously. The girls complied, setting the bags on the ground. One of them unzipped partially as it hit the rocky surface, revealing the unmistakable shape of a disassembled rifle. Before anyone could react, gunfire erupted from somewhere behind them. Eli dove for cover as bullets ricocheted off the surrounding rocks, the officers returning fire while shouting for the girls to get down. Seline and the others scrambled back into the shelter, while Sawyer and his officers took defensive positions behind boulders, firing toward the source of the attack. "Stay down!" Sawyer shouted to Eli, who had pressed himself against a large rock, his heart pounding so hard he could barely hear. The exchange of gunfire continued for several chaotic minutes. Eli glimpsed Martinez taking careful aim before firing 3 rapid shots, followed by a cry of pain from the direction of their attackers. "One down!" Martinez called, already shifting his aim. Dixon moved to a better position, firing steadily at a target Eli couldn't see. Another cry, another announcement. "Second target down!" A final burst of gunfire from Sawyer, then silence fell once more. "Clear!" Sawyer shouted after a tense moment. "Dixon, secure the areas those shots came from. Martinez, with me." Eli remained frozen in place until Sawyer approached, holstering his weapon. "It's safe now. 3 armed men taken down, all alive but wounded. Backup's arriving." As if on cue, the sound of approaching vehicles and shouted commands floated up from below, the tactical team arriving at last. "You did this, Seline!" one of the wounded men shouted at her, struggling against his restraints despite his injury. "You brought the police to us, traitor!" "Silence!" Officer Martinez ordered, roughly pushing Ronnie's face down as they secured him. "You'll have plenty of time to talk at the station." The other 2 men were also secured and dragged away from the scene. Once the area was declared safe, Eli hurried to Seline's side, where the 3 young women huddled, helping her to stand as she emerged shakily from the shelter. "Seline," Eli said. "Eli," Seline said, standing as he entered. "You shouldn't have come." "What are you doing here?" he demanded, confusion and relief battling in his voice. "Who are these people? Why do you have weapons?" Before Seline could answer, Sawyer entered the shelter, his expression grave. "I'd like to know that as well," he said, glancing at the bags on the ground outside. "That was Roni. And the other 2, they came with Meta and Katerina," she said, pointing toward the men as police officers led them down the slope to the waiting cruisers below. "This is Meta," Seline continued, gesturing to the taller of the two girls, a slender teen with dark hair and cautious eyes. "And Katerina," she added, nodding toward the younger girl, who looked to be around 13 or 14. They're like me," Seline continued hesitantly. "Carlos took them when they were little, from families they robbed. We grew up together, but unlike me, they were sent to live with the buyers as first-hand receivers and cover whenever transactions happened." "Buyers?" Sawyer asked sharply. "You mean weapons buyers?" Meta spoke up, her voice soft but steady. "The men use young girls like us as fronts for their operations. Police won't shoot immediately if they see teenagers, which gives the men a head start if something goes wrong." "Those two men you shot," Katerina added, "they were our guardians, one assigned to each of us by the leader." Sawyer turned to Seline, his expression hardening. "Why didn't you tell us about them? About any of this?" "I never knew where they lived," Seline explained quickly. "I never knew where they kept them. These girls, they come and go. The only way to meet is when there's a transaction." "Is that what this was?" Sawyer gestured to the bags outside. "A weapons transaction?" Seline nodded reluctantly. "I'm the pin, the person in charge who hands the weapons to the buyer. Meta and Katerina collect them for their respective buyers." "And when were you planning to share this information with us?" Sawyer asked, his voice tight with controlled anger. "I couldn't just leave them," Seline said, her eyes flicking toward the other girls. "Not when I had a chance to help. If I had told you, and the buyers even suspected the police were closing in, they would have cut their losses, and I was terrified they'd get rid of Meta and Katerina." A commotion outside interrupted their conversation as tactical officers arrived, securing the area and treating the wounded men. One officer approached the shelter, reporting to Sawyer. "Sir, we've uncovered suitcases of cash hidden in a shack near this shelter. Looks like payment for the weapons." Sawyer nodded, then turned back to Seline. "Carlos's men, the buyers, where are they based?" "They hide in the tunnel beneath a stone house structure not far from here," Seline replied without hesitation. "We came from there," Eli interjected. "There's already a tactical team at the house." Seline's eyes widened with urgency. "Those men are heavily armed, Detective. The tunnels run deep. They stretch all the way to the Texas-Mexico border." Sawyer immediately reached for his radio, alerting the team at the house about the potential danger in the tunnels. When he finished, he fixed Seline with a stern look. "You could be prosecuted for this," he said gravely. "For lying to me when you said you had no other information. For being here, participating in this transaction, aiding these people. We found your hidden letters, signs that you still willingly follow Carlos." "I wanted to save Meta," Seline replied, her voice breaking slightly. "I've known her the longest, and I was scared that with all this investigation, they would end her life." She looked down, avoiding Eli's gaze. "I apologize for not letting anyone know about this. I was too scared." For a long moment, silence hung in the shelter as Sawyer processed this information. Finally, he sighed heavily. "We'll talk more about this later," he said, his voice softening slightly. "For now, let's get you all somewhere safe." As they exited the shelter, Eli caught Seline's arm. "Why didn't you tell me? I could have helped." If I told you, you would have gone straight to the police," she said, her gaze meeting his for a moment before drifting away. "But this was something I had to do on my own. Some things go beyond explanation." Eli wanted to argue, to demand more answers, but Sawyer was already ushering them toward the path. The three girls were guided carefully down the slope toward the waiting vehicles, leaving behind the weapons, the money, and perhaps, Eli hoped, some of the shadows that still clung to his sister's past. The drive back to the stone house was tense, the silence broken only by radio chatter as Sawyer coordinated with the tactical teams. Through the car window, Eli watched the desert landscape roll by, so familiar and yet somehow more menacing now that he understood more about what had been happening beneath its surface all these years. Seline sat beside him, her eyes fixed on some distant point. The other two girls had been placed in separate vehicles, surrounded by officers taking preliminary statements about the buyers they represented. As they approached the house, the scene that greeted them looked like the aftermath of an intense operation. Sawyer pulled up at a safe distance, instructing Eli and Seline to remain in the car while he assessed the situation. Through the open window, Eli could hear snippets of conversations, reports of resistance encountered in the tunnels, injuries sustained, weapons confiscated. Police vehicles surrounded the property. Several police personnel were being treated by medical teams for gunshot wounds. Tactical officers moved purposefully between vehicles, and a tense but controlled atmosphere pervaded the scene. Sawyer spoke briefly with the tactical team leader before returning to update them. The tunnels were occupied, just like Seline warned, he confirmed. We've taken 8 men into custody, 4 identified as representatives of the weapons buyers based on their IDs and the documents recovered. The other 4 were part of Ronnie Hardohell's crew. Eli watched as the 4 men, distinct from Ronnie and his crew in both appearance and attitude, were escorted from the house in handcuffs. Dressed in loose T-shirts now coated with desert dust, they carried themselves with a composed, calculating air rather than open hostility. At the far end of the clearing, Eli spotted a separate police van where Ronnie and the 2 guardians of Meta and Katerina were being secured. As one of the officers opened the van door to place Ronnie inside, the wounded man caught sight of Eli and Seline in the police car. His face twisted with rage, and despite his restraints and wound, he lunged toward them, dragging the officers several steps before they regained control. "Once a traitor, always a traitor!" he shouted at Seline, his voice carrying across the clearing. "You coward!" he spat in their direction, then turned to the officers. "That girl is Carlos's lover. Just ask her." The officers shoved him roughly into the van, but his words hung in the air. Eli saw Sawyer and several other officers exchange glances, their expressions concerned, as they looked toward the police car where Seline sat frozen. Moments later, Sawyer approached, opening Eli's door. "Let's talk," he said, his tone neutral but his expression grave. He led them to a command tent set up near the house, instructing them to sit at a folding table while other officers busied themselves with equipment and communications. "Tell me everything you know about him, Seline," Sawyer said firmly, nodding toward the transport van where the shouting man was being restrained. "This isn't the time to hold anything back." Seline answered without hesitation. "That's Ronnie, Carlos's most trusted man. Carlos let him handle this operation while he remained at the bar and communicated with the buyers." "And what did he mean?" Sawyer pressed. "About you being Carlos's lover?" Seline's face remained impassive, but Eli saw her hands tighten into fists beneath the table. "I told you why I returned to help Meta and Katerina," she said carefully. "But I haven't explained the letters you found or how I began communicating with them." "I'm listening," Sawyer said, sitting back in his chair. "You know I visited Carlos in the hospital," Seline began. "One day I noticed Ronnie's men following me back to the protection house. They knew where we lived." She took a deep breath. "When I had an opportunity, I told them I would stay in contact, trying to gain their trust by saying I'd help Carlos in court." "Why?" Eli asked, unable to keep silent any longer. "Why risk everything like that?" "I was trying to earn their trust again, to make them believe I was ready to handle the transaction," Seline said, her voice steady but low. "I begged them, told them I wanted to help Carlos. But the truth is, I just wanted to save Meta and Katerina." She glanced at Eli, then turned back to Sawyer. "The problem was, I didn't know where they were, so I started sending letters, and they sent replies, hidden in the pages of the daily newspaper." "And once you found them, what exactly was your plan to save them?" Sawyer asked, his tone still laced with skepticism. "I thought," I'd use the weapon on them, then call the police, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry. I should have at least informed you about the other girls and the hideout. She paused, her voice growing softer. It's not easy to let go of the past when it's all you've known. Living in that protection house, all the limitations, all the investigations, there were times I thought my life with them was better. Her eyes met Sawyer's directly. But I never meant to side with Carlos or return to Ronnie permanently. It was just a constant battle in my mind. And Ronnie's accusation? Sawyer prompted. About you and Carlos? A flicker of emotion crossed Seline's face. Pain, perhaps, or anger. Ronnie had been asking Carlos for me for years. Carlos never gave me to him. She looked down at her hands. I owe him that much. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. Sawyer studied her for a long moment before letting out a slow but heavy sigh. You need to be careful with what you say in front of the judges, Seline. Words can be twisted, and things could turn against you very fast. We'll bring in a teen psychology specialist, someone who can help explain how victims sometimes feel compelled to return to their abusers. I'd like that, Seline said quietly, to understand myself better and to move on. Sawyer nodded, then stood. We'll talk more at the station. For now, Officer Reyes will take you back to the car. As they walked across the dusty clearing, Eli reached into his pocket and retrieved the hair clip that had led them to this place. Carefully, he placed it on top of Seline's hair, securing a strand that had fallen across her face. I know how hard it is to hate someone like Carlos when he's been the only constant in your life, he said softly. You don't have to pretend to hate him for my sake. Seline looked at him, surprise evident in her expression. What do you mean? Now I understand what you said last night and why you refused this clip when Anya gave it to you, Eli continued. It's still hard for you to accept the truth, that by helping us, you feel like you betrayed him. Seline was silent for a moment, then spoke so quietly Eli had to lean closer to hear. Maybe he's right, that man, Ronnie. Maybe I am a traitor. Maybe I came here to get one last look at my previous life. Her eyes met his, filled with a complex mixture of emotions. But I promise, Eli, I never meant to become one of them again. I hope you can understand that moving on isn't always linear. I do understand, Eli assured her, surprising himself with the truth of it. Even if you decide to testify about the good things Carlos did for you in court, that's your right. But you need to be careful how you phrase it, because not everyone will understand your feelings. They reached the police car and climbed in, watching through the windows as Meta and Katerina provided information to officers in the command tent. Sawyer stood nearby, taking notes and coordinating with his team. I can hear them talking about the buyer's base camp, Seline said quietly. The girls are telling them everything, names, locations, how the deals went down. They've caught some of the men, but the leader of the group that was buying from Carlos is still hiding out at the base camp. What they don't realize is their time's running out. Eli nodded, relief washing over him. It sounds like they're bringing this whole operation down. Two officers climbed into the car, one behind the wheel, the other turning to speak to them from the passenger seat. We're heading back to the station so you can give your formal statements, he said. The other girls will be transported separately. Seline leaned forward urgently. Please, you have to send teams to those base camps now, before they realize something's wrong and vanish. The girls already gave you everything you need. If that leader gets away, they'll just rebuild somewhere else, and all of this will start over. The officer in the passenger seat exchanged a look with his partner, then gave a reassuring nod. 2 tactical teams were already dispatched, he said. They're moving in as we speak. We're not letting anyone else get away. As they pulled away from the stone house, Eli watched the desert recede in the side mirror. It struck him that healing from trauma was indeed, as Seline had said, not linear. The protection house might be their home for weeks. The legal battles might stretch for months or even years. but the psychological wounds, those might take a lifetime to fully heal. Yet for the first time since finding Seline, Eli felt a stirring of genuine hope. The road ahead would be difficult, marked by setbacks and unexpected turns, but they would face it together, rebuilding their lives one day at a time, reclaiming the years that had been stolen from them both. As the car sped toward Alpine, carrying them back to a world of statements and proceedings, evidence and testimonies, Eli reached across the seat and took his sister's hand. To his surprise and gratitude, she didn't pull away. "Whatever happens next," he said softly, "we'll figure it out." Seline's fingers tightened around his, the simple gesture more reassuring than any words could have been. They had found each other in the vastness of the Texas desert, against impossible odds. Surely, Eli thought, they could find their way forward from here. Two survivors navigating a landscape as complex and unforgiving as the desert itself, but no longer alone.